Buy a house and be a millionaire. Fool, don't buy a house, rent and be a millionaire. I'm sure we've all heard that buying is better than renting. And if we're renting, that means we're paying off the homeowner's loan and we're just throwing away our money. Wagwan future millionaires, welcome back to the channel. My name is Demetress Fairman. Today we're going to find out, is it better to buy or rent? What is the truth? Recently I went on a quest to buy a property and also went land scouting. House nice and thing, but there is this side of me that always wants to make the right financial decision. Sure, having a house just for the sake of having it is nice, but the truth is it's a liability and you can't make money from it. But the same can be said about renting. So the big question is, should you buy a house early in your 20s and hold it, or should you rent and invest the savings and buy further down the line? So I found this website called Financial Sensibility, and they are a Jamaican website, so that's pretty good. Feeling very proud right there. And they have this blog written by Gilly J. In summary, the blog focuses on 3 points when you're considering renting versus buying. It says you should consider the lifestyle. Do you travel a lot? Do you have a family? Or is your family expanding? Are you creative and want to have freedom to design your space? Do you like privacy? Are you financially responsible? The blog also wants you to focus on the legal side of this. What are your rights as a tenant versus your rights as a homeowner? And lastly, the point that's in everybody's face, that's one of the main determining factors when you're considering the renting versus buying, and that is the financials. Do you have high debt? Are you looking for an investment? Do you have a savings habit? Do you have a mortgage benefit? Or do you have NHT? I highly recommend that if you're watching this video, you should read that blog, because trust me, it brought things to my mind, brought things to my imagination, brought things to my calculations that I wasn't considering at all when making this decision. Sometimes it's easy to just say, yo, rent cheaper, but is it really better for your mental state? Or is it really better for your family? Or is it really better for the path that you're currently on? Sometimes cheaper isn't always better, but sometimes some of us just can't handle the big financial burden of taking on a mortgage. But the reason for me highlighting this website is because it has a bunch of calculators. And the calculator that she mentions in this blog is the rent versus buy calculator. In the blog, the scenario that we're met with is that this person is looking to buy a house for $15 million. So they'll have a down payment of $1.5 million. And assuming that the mortgage interest rate is 8.5% and they have 30 years to repay, their annual maintenance will be around $120,000 and their annual insurance would be around $168,000. They would have a monthly mortgage of $103,011.25. The calculator then compares this individual's outcome if they were to rent a place for $100,000 per month. Yes, this is a nice apartment, and they have investments put aside. So that initial down payment of $1.5 million, they would have this down as their investment. And assuming that they make 15% per year on this investment, these are the variables that this calculator will compute and then give us an answer to know that we should rent or we should buy. Now, based on these variables, the calculator is saying that present value of owning versus renting for 10 years would be $372,165. And it has a note that says if this is positive, then buying is a better option. And in financials, you can know if something is positive or negative. If the figure has a bracket around it, it's negative. If there's no bracket, then that means it's positive. And in this case, it shows that buying would be the better outcome. The calculator breaks it down even further and says that the value of this $15 million home after 10 years would now be $25,966,146. So this looks good and everything, but not everybody is paying that amount of rent monthly. What if we make this more personal? What if I put in my information and see what this calculator tells me based on my real world variables? Let's get started. So the house that I was looking on has a starting point of $18 million. I would make a 10% down payment, which is $1.8 million. Also, when I received my pre-qualification letter from the bank, they gave me a fixed interest rate of around 7%. They also gave me 30 years to repay. Now, when I was doing some research online, they said that the property tax rate was from 0.5 to 0.9%, so I'm going to use the lower of 0.5%. When I asked the HOA of that community how much they're going to charge, I think they gave me a figure of $7,000. So 7,000 times 12 is going to be 84,000. But hold on, stop there because I think that doesn't include lawn care. And in this area, the general lawn care is from $3,000 to $5,000. So we're just going to land right in the middle at $4,000. And let's say you're going to cut your lawn every month. So that's going to be $48,000 for the year. I would have loved if this calculator had a section for bills, but since bills fluctuate every month, I think that's why it's not in the calculator. So we're just going to leave it at maintenance and lawn care. And since I know every month things mash up, like that happens spontaneously, we won't add it to our calculation. So this brings our annual maintenance to $132,000. The calculator already has a total of $168,000 for the annual insurance, and since I don't know how to calculate insurance, we're just going to leave it at that. The calculator also assumes a 6% appreciation of your property per year, so we're just going to leave it at that. It says that the general inflation is 4%, but when I checked on the inflation so far for 2022, it was around 10.5%. So we're just going to carry it to 10. Alright, boom. So for our $18 million house, our monthly mortgage is going to be $107,066.69. Now to calculate the rent. This community that I'm speaking about is in the general vicinity of where I currently live. However, that house is a new establishment. So yes, it's kind of unfair to compare where I rent right now to the house that I wanted to buy, but it is what it is, and these are the variables. Cost of renting a similar home. Right now in Old Harbor, it ranges anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000. So we're just going to drop halfway and we're going to say that we're paying $45,000 per month. And since most of the houses being rented in Old Harbor, the tenant has to cover the maintenance costs and the lawn care, we're going to add that to the overall rent. So $45,000 plus $5,000 is going to be $50,000 per month for rent. In the article, it says that the person who owns the home has the ability or the right to increase the rent 3% per year. So in the section that says assume rental price inflation, that is the increase that they speak about. Now, because you're renting, you're going to put aside some money. So that money that you would have saved from renting instead of buying, you would invest that money because you have to make that money appreciate somehow, because if you buy a house, it's going to appreciate. So you need to compete. And since the person who made this calculation found out that the average return on the Jamaica Stock Exchange is around 15% if you're following the main market, then they're assuming that your overall portfolio would be around 15% per year. Also, I'm going to be conservative and bring it to 10%. Now the calculator is going to do its thing and give us our verdict. Is renting better or is buying better? Now, according to this calculator, and remember what I said about financials, is that if it has the bracket around it, it's a negative, and if there's no bracket, it's positive, and being that the calculator has a note that says if this figure is positive, buying is better. So according to the calculator, present value benefit of owning versus renting for 10 years is negative $3,808,918. Being that this is negative, renting would be a better outcome for me or a better choice for me. So my conclusion is that it depends on where you're living. Location is a hell of a thing, and that's one of the main factors that you should focus on when trying to decide if you should buy or rent, because you could live in an area where the rent is low and the housing is relatively cheap. But let's say I was in Kingston and I was paying $100,000 per month on rent. This would be completely different. As you can see, the calculator gave me a positive figure. So that means if I was living in Kingston or anywhere that I should pay $100,000 per month in rent, it would be better to actually buy a property. But the thing is, kind of hard to get a property in Kingston that's worth $80 million. Not impossible, but hard. Taking on a mortgage is something huge. It's a big responsibility. You don't just put your money in a house and lock it up and expect it to grow, or just listen to society and think that you have to buy a property to be successful, or you have to buy a property because it's a rite of passage. You have to do the calculation. If it fits your lifestyle, if it fits your income, and if it's something that benefits you and your family, then go ahead and do it. Yes, buying a house would be great, but for me, it has to make financial sense. It has to be something that I can make money from. Not just because I want somewhere nice to live and for people to say, yeah man, that boy I live somewhere nice and his house always look good and rare, but how is that going to put money in my pocket? And that's something that is important to me since I want to be a future millionaire. How will something make me money? And it's not how people view it, it's how I view my pocket. Anyways, download the calculator, do the research yourself, put in your figures, see if it makes sense for you, and make your decision. Again, thanks to Financial Sensibility and the author Gilly J for doing this blog about renting versus buying. Generally, we see all this data presented about United States and other countries, but none showing us how it's done in our homeland of Jamaica. So this is very good. Thank you for sharing and subscribing to this channel. And remember to ring that notification bell if you don't want to miss out on the future millionaire gems. Until next time, happy investing.